Everybody, and welcome to our Glassdoor UK client training with Wiltshire Council. We'll be discussing how they use Glassdoor to promote their brand. Our featured speakers today are Dave Brown, who is Customer Success for Glassdoor, and both Jane Graham and James Kent from Wiltshire Council. My name is Dania, and I'm on the marketing team at Glassdoor, and I'll pass over to Dave Brown, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Dania, and thank you everybody for joining. My name is Dave Brown. I work out of Glassdoor's Dublin, Ireland office as Customer Success Manager. My team works with our clients to pair their employer branding and recruiting needs with Glassdoor's products and solutions. I really want to thank Jane Graham and James Kent for joining us today, and I can't wait to hear more from them. Until then, we're going to go through a few slides and talk a bit about employer branding, how you can leverage Glassdoor for your brand, responding to reviews on Glassdoor, and then again we're going to kick things over to Wiltshire Council to talk about how they leverage Glassdoor, some key learnings, and of course some Q&A at the end. I'm going to steal a little quote from Jeff Bezos, co-founder, of course, of Amazon. Jeff Bezos says, "Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. The room today is very much the internet and social media, and it's Glassdoor. If you aren't telling your story, someone else is." The days are gone when you could develop a message and rest your employer brand on it. Today, if your message says one thing and your employees are saying another, you risk losing credibility. So we tell employers to ask themselves, would current employees recommend your organization to a friend? What are job seekers saying about you on social media? And what is your company rating on Glassdoor today? Your brand is probably already on Glassdoor. Your employees have a voice. They're sharing it. Have you gone to Glassdoor to check out your ratings and reviews and your company's profile? This is the best place to start. And hopefully this feedback helps you learn about reputation. Consider this your first and last impression to today's candidates. In times past, for many, work was where you would go each day to clock in and out. But things have changed, and today, companies are selling themselves as a lifestyle brand where work and life merge. Candidates realize that they're going to spend more time often at work than with their own families, and it's one of the biggest decisions that they're going to make throughout their lives. So they're, of course, turning to resources like Glassdoor. Your message has to resonate to these candidates on a personal level. Part of this, and part of your employer brand, is your interview process. In your Glassdoor Employer Center, for instance, there's amazing data to inform you of the experience your candidates are having with your company. Leveraging this to highlight changes needed in your interview process can make or break whether or not you win top talent. At Glassdoor, we use our own feedback to identify where there might be bottlenecks in our interview process and to make sure that the candidate experience is both transparent and smooth. Of course, another part of employer brand on Glassdoor is a company's ratings and reviews. In this case, we're looking at HubSpot and what their overall company rating is, CEO approval rating, etc. These ratings are coming from current and past employees who have worked at HubSpot. There's also a lot of additional analytics that employers pull from Glassdoor and leverage in order to learn, grow, and improve. This includes analytics around demographics, profile traffic, followers on Glassdoor, ratings trends and how their ratings have changed over time, and of course, how they stack up next to talent competitors. We certainly urge you to do the same and access your analytics within your Glassdoor Employer Center. I want to switch gears here a little bit and talk about culture, because employer brand is not just about ratings and reviews and data points. It's about culture. It's interesting, 82% of today's company leaders believe that culture is what gives them a competitive advantage. However, 87% say that culture is a top challenge within their organization. So we've got a few ideas on ways to sort of approach that topic. We're going to talk about responding to reviews for a moment. Employers can respond to reviews on Glassdoor and join that conversation. This is important because it shows your staff that you're listening to their feedback, and it shows candidates that you're a transparent company. And transparency really is the magic word here. 90% of job seekers today say that it's important for a company, it's important to work for a company that embraces transparency. And this stat I love, 62% of candidates on Glassdoor agree that their perception of a company improves after seeing an employer respond to a review. I know while working at Glassdoor, we receive feedback from our clients who have said that in some cases, they've won top talent specifically because they were responding to reviews on Glassdoor and their competitors were not. Companies shape how they respond to reviews in a variety of ways on Glassdoor. What we're seeing on this screen is a bit of a flow chart where you can get an idea of how you might sort of break out who responds to reviews when, depending on certain criteria. In this case, if a review comes into a company that's 1 to 3 stars, that might be one person's job to respond to that review. 4 to 5 stars, and maybe that goes a different direction. You can, of course, shape this to whatever works best for your company. And of course, part of employer branding and transparency is listening to employees. A lot of companies turn to Glassdoor's analytics to help understand what employees are actually saying when they describe the pros and cons of working for your company. What we're seeing here is an example of what employers get with their Glassdoor analytics. This surfaces the words and phrases used the most commonly from employee reviews. We're going to turn things over to Wiltshire Council now to talk a little bit about how they have leveraged Glassdoor for their employer brand efforts. So take it away, Wiltshire.
Hello, everybody. It's Jane here. So I was just going to talk a little bit about the things that we did to promote and build our brand via Glassdoor. So one of the first things I'd say is the first thing you should be doing is defining what your employee value proposition or your EVP is. So if you haven't got one, then that certainly to me, that's a starting point, because you can't be clear about what you want to communicate if you don't understand who you are, what your values are, and that needs to be a joined up vision across the council. So you do need senior buy-in and leadership, and your EVP is really the fabric of your building. It's something your staff should be able to articulate and identify with. So we did some work a couple of years ago to define ours, and we do have an EVP brand, and we also have a proposition which is based around 3 pillars of collaboration, empowerment and innovation. So if you looked on our careers website, if you read any of our job ads, if you looked at any of our images, read some staff blogs, films, and also the messages that we promote via social media, you'll see that it is very visible. We've done some internal rollout, but our next big project that we'll be embarking on is just to take that one step further. So your employee value proposition is absolutely key, because you want people who actually go onto your Glassdoor profile to understand who you are, what you can offer, what your values are. Another thing that we did was to identify our unique selling points, so we could define why Wiltshire Council is the best place to work, because believe it or not, not all councils are the same. So there are clearly some areas where councils have been in competition for talent historically, like social work, although we're joining up a lot more on that. And we often have to compete with higher salary levels offered by the private or commercial sector. So for example, if you work in the IT sector, often the salaries are a lot higher if you work in the private sector than they are in the public sector. So to complement our EVP, we also needed to identify what makes us a unique and best place to work. So for us, some of that is around the opportunities we have for flexible working. That may not be available to the same extent within the private sector. And this is particularly important when you're talking to staff, when you're talking to people who come to interviews, if you're juggling caring responsibilities, or if you just want to achieve a better work-life balance. Our facilities here are top class. You'll see from the images we've got on our Glassdoor profile and on our website, etc., that we've invested in a major building and reorganisation programme. And that's resulted in some really fantastic working spaces. And although that might sound a bit superfluous, and it actually supports our creativity and innovation. And it's really important for employees who work here that they can use the space in a different way, and they're actually working in a really nice environment. What I say is Glassdoor isn't the only channel you should be using to promote your brand. It's important also to consider, whilst you're developing your Glassdoor profile, that you develop your other social media channels. So social is so important. It's a way you can maximize engagement, attraction and promotion. So again, a couple of years ago, we started on the whole social media kind of journey, and now we extensively use Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and last year we started with Instagram. Each have different audiences. We tailor our messages differently according to what social media platform we use. But the important thing to remember is that these also, not only do people look on social, because it's so important and it is a way, as I said, that you can really reach people and people understand who you are, it also feeds into your Glassdoor profile. So it helps draw people into finding more information about your company, and they can also see live tweets and live posts. So my message really around that is that you should see Glassdoor as an important but complementary platform within your overall digital strategy that sits alongside those other social media channels. The employee voice is really critical to all of this, both in supporting the promotion of the employer brand and confirming the employee proposition, but also in terms of feedback. So listening to employees to tell you where improvements can be made. So James is just going to talk to you a bit about this now and how we've engaged our employees. Over to you, James.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's really important at this point to remember that most successful modern brands have an orientation which is very much customer focused, meaning they're looking to understand and anticipate their customer needs. And very much by the same token, successful employer brands need to have an orientation that's very much employee focused so that you can understand and anticipate your customer needs. And the best way of doing this is by listening to the employee voice. There's lots of different ways to listen to employee voice, which is why we say Glassdoor is a key source for employee voice. Different ways might be for managers to feedback to senior managers how their teams are doing, what they're feeling. There might be feedback through staff surveys or exit interviews. But all these ways are really formal, and they're normally based around the organization. What we really like about Glassdoor is it's much more informal, and it's done on an employee's terms. But we very much understand that it's part of an overall mix of feedback and employee voice. Communicating our employer brand through Glassdoor is kind of made easy for us because Glassdoor is there to help you communicate your employee brand. There's so many opportunities between pictures, videos, the wording you use on your company profile, and it's really an area for you to express who you are and express your EVP. The different areas that are really key within that are things like the company updates. So company updates are areas where you can broadcast much as you would on other social media channels about things that are happening. We tend to use it for things like Meet Our People, which is mentioned here. And this is very much an informal way of introducing people who work at Wiltshire Council so that people can see what type of people they might be working with and what interests they have. We also use company updates to highlight any key roles we're looking to recruit for, and also to let people know about any newsworthy things that are happening, maybe awards we've been shortlisted for, or key services we're looking to do. Reviews from employees is, as we mentioned, a really key thing for employee voice. One of the things you absolutely need to do is to let employees who work for you know that Glassdoor is there as something that they can use to feedback to you. If someone is taking the time to give you feedback, we think it's absolutely key that you reply to the reviews within a timely manner. But most importantly is that you take action on those. So for example, if someone's leaving you some feedback and you're getting back to them saying, thanks very much for this feedback, that's really kind of you, we will be looking into this. Make sure you do what you say and make sure you do look into it. The reviews for interviews is similar. This is obviously not necessarily people who have all made it through to be employees, but these are people that have taken an interest in your organization. So it's absolutely key that you're taking feedback from people who have gone and engaged with you as a potential employer. If there are any issues or if there's good feedback to be given to internal teams to make sure that processes can be improved upon, this is really key. But like Dave mentioned, 90% of people want to work for a transparent organization, and engaging with Glassdoor is a really obvious way of being transparent. Certainly, as has already been mentioned, people will be talking about you on social media. You probably already have a Glassdoor profile with people giving feedback already, and it's really key to show that you're confident in your employer brand, that you can go out and talk to people about it. So I think Jane's now going to give you some key learnings and key takeaways.
Hello, it's me again. So we've been running with our Glassdoor profile now for just over a year, and we were the first engaged UK local council to partner up with Glassdoor. So I'm just going to share with you some of the learnings along the way and reflections. So if I'm ever having a conversation with colleagues about embarking on Glassdoor, I would say that the #1 factor is understanding that you will need to make a certain level of initial investment to get your Glassdoor profile up and to maintain it. So you will need to identify someone who can take a lead and liaise with Glassdoor and to get the initial work done. And you also need to work out the mechanics of responding to employee candidate reviews, posting content, company updates, and just making sure that the content on your profile is up to date. It's so important to remember that, you know, timely responses to reviews, updated content, really engaging content, good images, so critical to engage people with your profile and to ultimately take them to the next step of looking at your vacancies and investigating more about your organisation. When we set up Glassdoor, I did have a scout around at some of our competitors, many of whom didn't have a claim profile. It's amazing how many people don't even know that they do have a profile. However, we were directed by Glassdoor, which was really helpful, to look at some of our kind of bigger local competitors like Nationwide Building Society, who are based in Swindon. They have a big headquarters which is just on our doorstep. They've been doing it for some time, and they had their profile well managed, and it was looking great. So all I'd say is there's no shame in looking at other profiles and pinching ideas and actually making contact with your competitors. Also, as an engaged employer, we can ensure our jobs are posted on competitors' profiles, probably much to their kind of dismay, but we can sort of get our jobs under the noses of people who are looking perhaps at other profiles. And we can understand how that's doing by looking at our analytics, and we can compare with our competitors. So we keep an eye on the competition, and we do that regularly. It's really important, as James said, to respond to reviews in an open and transparent way. We're working towards open company status. I think we're nearly there. Don't get dragged into a defensive posture. It's really easy to sort of say, yeah, well, thank you for your review, but we don't think we've got a problem. It's not what the reviewee wants to hear. It doesn't do anything for your profile or your rating. And as we know, they will then go on to kind of share their experiences with other people. We often seek feedback from our peers and colleagues when addressing anything negative. Thankfully, we haven't had many negative comments and reviews, but quite often they do crop up, and they're things sometimes out of our control. We bounce ideas off of each other, so we make sure that the response is clear and it's measured and it's fair and it's done in a timely way. We've got some work to do to roll out the awareness of Glassdoor to all of our employees, but it's actually surprising when you start talking to new recruits about the kind of research they've done before they actually applied for your job. So I don't think it's to be underestimated. I think Glassdoor is firmly out there, people know about it, and they're looking about your company. We spent the last year really building up our profile, getting our social media presence well established, which is what I've just said, which is important. But we know that our own staff have a part to play in promoting our brand, providing us with good feedback about the reality working for us versus the perception and what we're trying to promote. We need to make sure that they all kind of marry up. Finally, the last point, we're looking at how we integrate Glassdoor in our onboarding process. So we're mapping out our e-recruitment processes. So we've got an e-recruitment system, and looking at what points in that process can we use to promote Glassdoor. For example, we'll send candidates offer letters out, or preferred candidates their offer letters out. Could we include something in about Glassdoor in that letter? Our job adverts. I mean, we do already have something on our careers website with a link to our profile. Plus, we regularly tweet and post about our overall rating and key aspects of that rating. So, for example, the flexible working bit of that rating is really high, and that's obviously one of our unique selling points and supports our overall employee value proposition. So it all reinforces that and helps towards kind of brand management. And I think, you know, that's the key points that I just wanted to share with you, and I'm happy to talk about that when it comes to questions. So I think it's back to you, Dave.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Jane. Really appreciate it. Very helpful. I have a question for James Kent at Wiltshire Council. When it comes to the topic of responding to reviews, how do you handle that organizationally? In other words, when a new review comes in for your company, how do you manage who responds to that review, when, and what that response is going to look like?
Great question. Thank you for that. The main thing is I am the account manager that looks after the Glassdoor account, but also tied in is my colleagues Jane and Rebecca. So we all have sight when a review comes in. You're notified about it, which is really helpful. We tend to be on there daily anyway, posting company updates, but having and being informed as soon as one comes in is great. How we respond to it is very much dependent on what's being said. So if it was, for example, a really positive review that was saying nice things, I would tend to probably highlight it just in a conversational way to say, look, this is really good. We've had some good feedback on this. Isn't this great? And then write a thank you reply. We try to get back to people within 24 hours. If it was something that was highlighting issues where there might be questions raised, we then tend to make sure that we go down a path of finding out what's happened so that we can actually give a balanced reply to it. I think the important thing that I mentioned earlier is that it's really easy when you get a review to have an idea of what best practice would be, with which, you know, might be thank you for this, I will be looking into it. And it's something that can be a bit of a syndrome on a restaurant review site that we probably all know about, in that people will see the same criticisms coming up and someone will just say, thank you for your review, we will be looking into this, I will be speaking to the chef, and clearly it doesn't happen. So it's really key that if you are saying you're going to be looking into processes and exploring them, that you actually do it. Something else that we do, if we feel there is more feedback that we would like, in the reply we do say we would like to hear more about this and give our contact details so someone can get back in touch with us and we can explore it further. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I learned a few new things. Appreciate it.
So, Jane and James, I wondered if you had any questions for Dave before we jump in to a couple of audience questions.
Yeah, Dave, actually, I was just wondering, you know, in the process of using Glassdoor over the last, you know, few months, we've seen a few subtle changes that have been implemented that I guess have helped us improve our workflow. Is there anything you've got on the horizon that's going to be helpful to us?
Great question. And yeah, Glassdoor has a lot of great surprises in store over the next few months, some of which we of course can't quite talk about yet, but I know our audience will be surprised and delighted. One of the things I know we're really looking forward to rolling out is even more robust suite of analytics to help employers really get the information that's going to be the most meaningful to them. A lot of employers have, maybe one employer brand, it might have little nuances from one market to the next. So we're going to have additional ways of helping them shape that brand depending on their audience, as well as looking at their analytics based on reviews coming in from different locations, different types of jobs, and things like that. So that's, I guess, a little sneak peek, if you will.
Great.
Fantastic. Okay, let's jump into some audience questions. So Jane and James, I'm not quite sure who will be answering the question, but here is one from the audience. What kind of things do companies typically do when faced with negative reviews, especially if they feel that they're not truthful?
I can pick that one up if you like, James. Okay. You will no doubt you've got to be prepared, as we say, for negative feedback. It's not going to be all glowing and rosy all of the time. And you do have to be mindful with whatever is going on within your own organisation at the time. So you could be undergoing restructuring, you could be undergoing a redundancy program. You just have to be mindful of that. I think the key thing is not to do a knee-jerk kind of response. And sometimes you might have to engage with a particular part of your organisation if it's about a particular aspect that person's got some negative feedback about. So, for example, some of the comments that I would say are negative, but for us are around car parking, which is such a hot topic and a very emotive issue of staff being able to park on site. And we introduced a new car parking policy and system probably about 6 to 8 months ago now, and it came up in some of the reviews. So we took a steady approach to that. We kind of within HR and OD, we kind of just bounced some ideas off of each other so we could make sure that the response was accurate. I think that's the other thing, to be accurate. If you think it's something that isn't true, I mean, you've got to remember at the end of the day that the person who's taken time to respond, might not be in a particularly good place. I think you have to acknowledge it in some ways by almost simply saying, thank you very much for your review. Really grateful for you taking the time, and not ignore it. It depends on what that feedback is, but kind of just focus on more of the positive stuff. I mean, it's very difficult to speak generally because I think each review is quite individual. And I think you just have to make a kind of a judgment call, but actually talk to your colleagues about it before you don't do a knee-jerk response. That's what I would say.
Fantastic, thanks, Jane. So we just have one more question from the audience for Dave Brown, and Dave will then pop back on, and he'll be discussing a couple of the last slides. Firstly, sharing with you how you can use the information that you've heard today, and secondly, some of the useful resources that Glassdoor have to offer you. So Dave, what would you suggest would be one of the first things to tackle when starting to build your employer brand?
It's a good question. I say the first thing to do, if you haven't already, is sign up for a Glassdoor employer account. This can allow you to actually join the conversation on Glassdoor today. When you have an employer account, you can access your company's Glassdoor Employer Center. You can provide some basic information about your company. You can access at least some high-level competitive analytics and data. There's a whole library of tools and resources that we have on branding and recruiting. Really great information there. I think most of all, it's just important to remember that today, candidates who might have an offer in your hand from your, candidates today might have an offer in hand from your company, and this is your chance to influence them at the moment that they might be making their decision about whether or not to accept that offer. So go ahead and start taking advantage of the features that you can use today for free as a good first step. The other thing I should note too is that after this call, we will be sending out a link for anybody who wants to get an employer account to be able to get to that page with ease, so no worries there. Okay, in closing, we're going to go back through just some remaining slides here, so if we can turn you back to the screen share. We want you to know how to use this information from today and how to use the information on Glassdoor. For one, use the interview feedback on our site. Use this to improve the interview process in each location and each step of the way. Make sure that the candidate journey is as pleasant as it can be and that you can win top talent. Keep up to date with the positive feedback. And that's an important one. I think too often it's easy just to focus on the negative or the critical things that come through. There's a lot of great things being said about your company as well. Make sure to identify those things, surface that, replicate those things in areas where they might be needed. Take on board the areas for improvement. And I think Jane Grand just gave us some good examples of how their companies used Glassdoor reviews to understand what they can improve, and it sounds like that's really resonated with their staff. And of course, be prepared. If there is particularly negative feedback, have a process in place internally to understand what a response might look like, and more importantly, what your organization might do in answer to that feedback. We have some additional employee engagement resources. The link below is glassdoor.co.uk/employers/resources. I can't say enough good things about the ebooks and webinars and all this information that we hope you'll find useful ongoing. Okay, so we're going to close it up on this side.